Welcome to Rob and Tony's Cinematic Adventure. I'm Rob Wilson.
And I am Tony DeQuano.
So, Tony, today, in this episode, we're continuing with the Indiana Jones series, with Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
The Last Crusade.
The first Indiana Jones movie that I ever saw.
Mine too. And when I saw it, I don't think I understood what they really meant by The Last Crusade.
I didn't either.
Because I was like probably 5.
Yeah, I was, I think, 6.
My brother's birthday party, and he wanted to see the new Indiana Jones movie. I'm like, tag along.
Yep.
So,
did you see it in the theater then?
I did.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, I was like one of the, the second run movie theaters too.
Okay.
So
like the dollar theater type thing? That don't exist anymore? I miss dollar theaters.
At that point, maybe it was even 50. Yeah. I have this memory of after walking out, because they had the posters for coming attractions or stuff that's kind of out already. And there was this movie with Mel Gibson, Goldie Hawn, called Bird on the Wire. I wonder what that's about.
Oh, yeah.
I still have never seen Bird on the Wire.
I've never seen Bird on the Wire either.
There's also one for Joe versus the Volcano.
That was a great movie. That's one that maybe we should do on this podcast sometime.
Yeah.
Joe versus the Volcano was a great movie.
Kind of the forgotten Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan feature.
Way better than Sleepless in Seattle. Way better than You've Got Mail.
Hey, You've Got Mail's got Dave Chappelle.
It does. It does. But it's no Joe versus the Volcano.
But Last Crusade. So yeah, I was like 5. I think it was 6. Right around there. That would have been what, late 89? Yeah, it came out in 89.
Yep, came out in 89.
And probably not quite 6. My brother's birthday is before mine. So, and I remember seeing that. A year later, my brother got the VHS for his birthday, and I remember watching a bunch of that one after he got that in VHS. It's kind of my first exposure. I've kind of talked about that on previous episodes. Well, if I mentioned that, we had the videotape, and there was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like, what 6-year-olds would be like, oh, at that point, maybe some 6-year-olds know all about the Crusades, them knights.
Yeah, although when I first saw it, I thought it was called Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Not Crusade. Because I hadn't seen the title written out. I just heard people saying it, and nobody would ever pronounce the D on the end when I first saw it.
Yeah.
And I was 6, so I was not that bright of a child. I know there are some genius 6-year-olds out there, but I was not one of them. But no, so there was one of my siblings. I don't remember which one. There was some party or something. I think it might have been Scott, my brother. Like he was at a friend's house or something like that with a bunch of other kids. And for some reason, I was there too. My brother's 4 years older than me. So he was like 10 at this time.
Yeah. Probably mom.
So
it happened.
Yeah, probably. But for some reason, I was there. And everybody, this was 90 or 91.
Uh-huh.
And somebody had the VHS of Last Crusade, and everybody wanted to watch it. So we watched it, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved it. And that's part of the reason why, though, Raiders is arguably the best of the Indiana Jones movies.
Absolutely.
Best made, best, just everything that went into it was perfect. Last Crusade is my favorite.
Yeah, I could buy that. And I can see it even from the perspective that I think for that age in particular, too, I think there's a lot more latch on to than the other two. Yeah. Right? Temple of Doom had some of it, but then, scenes that will scar you if you're 5 and watching it. And Raiders, it's a fun adventure movie, but I think you have to be maybe a couple 3-4 years older, be closer to that 10 age to really get in the swashbuckling adventure of it. There's a few more scenes within Last Crusade that really get you into it.
Yeah, I mean, Last Crusade's definitely the one that I've seen the most. I watched it all the time growing up. I watched the other ones
too. But yeah, the same reason we had the VHS. We watched it over and over.
Yeah, I got the VHS. So McDonald's had the VHS tapes. Remember that?
Yeah.
And so we got them from there. We got them from McDonald's.
Okay.
Now, I'm not sure if they sold all three of them or if they've just sold one or two of them. But I know we got at least one of them from McDonald's.
Okay.
I always thought we got all three of them from there. But yeah, it's possible we didn't. But I know we at least got one of them from there. But yeah, that was back when McDonald's had like cool stuff.
Yeah.
You could buy a movie.
They closed the one in Cascades. That makes me sad.
Really?
Just happened.
Wow.
It's gonna be a Shake Shack instead.
What? Come on.
Killing childhood.
Didn't they close the Boston Market there a while back too?
Yeah.
Oh.
There's still a Starbucks.
Of course there is. There will always be a Starbucks. Yeah, so
You could tell, obviously the first time I watched this, how they just borrow heavily back to the formula of Raiders, right?
yeah.
Which I love, it works in its own way. Nazis, cool prologue, devious people.
Oh, and by the way, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about this entire movie, so if you have not seen it and you don't want to be spoiled, then pause the podcast, go watch the movie, and come back and finish the podcast. Yes. If you don't mind spoilers, keep listening.
Just keep listening. I mean, it's a fun movie. And
it's a great movie. It's a fantastic movie. It's one
really
of my
only
favorite
one
movies.
Spoiler, but you kind of understand. Well, I guess two, but kind of see both of them. Also, the first movie I probably saw was Sean Connery.
It was the first movie I saw with Sean Connery, too.
Yet. I had heard of James Bond, but I don't think I would have connected Sean Connery with James Bond when I saw this movie.
Yeah, I didn't. I actually learned years later that Connery was the first Bond.
Yeah.
This was my introduction to Sean Connery, and part of the reason why he was cast was because he was James Bond.
Yes.
I thought
Not
that
because he's
that
that much older than Harrison Ford.
No, he's only something like 12 years older than Harrison Ford.
Yeah, no, I think Sean Connery's born 30, and Ford was born 2.
Yeah.
They're 60 and almost 50.
Yeah.
And so
yeah,
it's kind of funny, you look back at it, Harrison Ford still looked kind of young.
Yeah, he did.
In this movie. Connery kind of, Connery's always had the grayish white hair, so you can always look distinguished. So you can him either being 50 or 60.
And the times when he didn't have grayish, hair, he was wearing a toupee. So so yeah, he still looked pretty Zardoz-esque in Last Crusade, just with a full beard instead of just a mustache. Maybe we should do Zardoz near sometime.
That'd be a crazy one to do. I would love to do Highlander, obviously.
Oh yeah, I mean we're gonna do that one someday, one of these days. That's a must. But
yeah, I got my shot again. One to live forever. Anyway.
Yeah. So Last Crusade. It was also my introduction to River Phoenix.
I was thinking about that before we got on. I was like, oh yeah, it was probably the first thing I saw with River Phoenix, and I remember one time I was watching it. One of the first time probably watching it on tape, saying that name, and not long after he died, right? And talking about him. For some reason, I was thinking that he was one of the other characters to start the movie.
Yeah,
and young Indy, right?
He was young Indy.
So I think my brother had been familiar with him bad because of Stand By Me. But yeah, that was the first thing. He's one of the actors that play, I guess, at least theatrically, one of the, 2 actors played. Because you got Indy, you got, Ford, then you got young Indy is River Phoenix. So that's how it starts. It's Utah, 1912? Somewhere there in the early
Yeah, I think it was 1912. Because I think he was 13 during that time. Indy was born in 1899, so that would be 1912.
There's automobiles on it, obviously, and trains. I like it because it's just in the desert. So, it's a similar setup to the start of Raiders, or off on this little kind of adventure or quest. Here he's an early Boy Scout. Everyone gets lost but him and the fat kid.
Yep.
Because he's with Indy. And they stumble upon some, like, I guess, not grave robbers, they're just searching for treasure hunters, right?
Treasure hunters that came across the Cross of Coronado.
Cross of Coronado. Mm-hmm. It belongs in the museum.
Yeah.
Of course, all goes wrong, right? And then it's a great chase sequence. Like, what's not to like?
It is.
Like, no, it's again, as you were saying, because we were watching this as 5 or 6 year olds. Of course, this is going to stick with us.
Yeah, and when you're 6 years old, when you're 5 or 6 years old, you don't notice that the giraffes are completely fake on that circus train. You don't notice that the rhino is completely fake. You don't notice that the snake that he pulled out of his sleeve is completely fake, and he's shaking his hand to make it move.
I mean, it's also like, 1989, so, not terrible effects.
Not terrible effects. I'm not knocking the effects at all. I'm just saying, when you're that young, watching it, you don't notice that you're just so enthralled in the story and the visuals that it's
acted well, the visual well, the music is really good.
It's John Williams,
right? Yeah.
You can't go wrong with John Williams.
Yeah. And then you get a train full of circus. It's kind of funny to think of circus animals, but like I guess you think of maybe like a lion and a few of them, but of course, there's snakes. There's tiny ones and it does well to also then establish characteristics of Indy. Yes. The iconic stuff, right?
Yeah. Each car on the circus train, it develops one of the Indy characteristics that has been throughout all the movies.
Oh,
it establishes, like, because in the cave when they were watching the guys with the Cross of Coronado, there's a snake that little fat kid is scared of, and young Indy, grabs it, tosses it aside. He's like, it's just a snake.
Yeah.
But the circus train, he falls into a big old crate full of snakes.
Because they're crawling across the top of the train cars, and then the roof gives through, and he falls into. And that would be enough.
And then
I don't like that.
Is the cause of his fear of snakes. Then when he falls into the lion car, you get two things with that. You get the first time he used a whip, and you get the reason for the scar on his chin.
It's the lion's car. There's the tamer's whip, obviously. Mm-hmm. Right?
So he grabs the whip off the wall, cracks it a few times with the lion, and it backs up. But the first time he cracked it, he hit himself in the chin, and that's where you get that scar.
Yeah, he gets a scar on his chin. That's how Harrison Ford has a scar on his chin.
Yeah. Which happened from a car accident.
But it's done well. And he finally ends up in the magic car. He goes into the box and disappears. They have him trapped and he comes out, right? And you got the music that swells. And they got the guys like, damn, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a perfect start. And I've seen some people kind of complain. I don't know if this is a more recent complaint about the movie that, why do they have to give that part of the backstory? Like, why not? I get sometimes some things today in some movies, some characters, you describe too much of the backstory. I get that. But these are minor things that, I don't get why you need to be why are you complaining about this?
Yeah. And, I mean, it's not even like it's taking up a whole lot of screen time giving the backstory.
No.
It's like 2 seconds.
It's a basic prologue. It's and it being like a 10-minute prologue. It's all good stuff. And it's important because the prologue also establishes the relationship with his dad, which is a major part of the movie.
Yeah. And, I mean, people complaining about giving little tiny things backstory, like how Indy got his scar on his chin. They obviously don't pay much attention to Star Wars because the tiniest little things in that get big, long backstories.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, there's every character in the Mos Eisley Cantina that's shown for a half a second has some entire novel of a backstory. So, a little backstory is not a bad thing sometimes.
No, it's not.
It's
fun.
Some people want to know those little details like that.
And I think the way he did with this, it totally makes sense. 13-year-old Indy is out on a scouting adventure.
And then gets into a treasure hunting adventure.
Yeah. and he's running off. He's escaping, and then, like he does, he finds a way to escape and do it. Things happen, right?
The caboose of the train just happened to be the magic caboose.
Yeah, worked out because
he climbed into a box and ended up outside the train.
I'm still not exactly sure how that works because he's got to be careful dropping beneath. Like, where did the compartment go into that?
And then also,
I guess he was able to crawl towards like the back steps.
Yeah,
then run.
Yeah. I always wondered how he got outside of the train and that, like, what the trick was with that box.
Like the box, like it could make sense on a non-moving train.
Yeah, there could just be a trap door down to the tracks, and you just drop down there and crawl out the bottom.
It's there in front, wherever the train is parked for the circus.
Mm-hmm.
But in the moving train, things are different.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
But then also he runs home. He runs home. Like how far away does he live? Did he run all that way, or did he like hitchhike home, like, and then run from wherever they parked
I don't know.
back to the house? Because it shows him running from the train, and then it shows him running to his house.
Quickly.
So yeah. So how far away from home were they?
It's Utah in 1912.
Yeah, a lot of open spaces.
I mean, there's a lot of open spaces in Utah now.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's a fast-growing state, but still. It's not exactly like Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's the Coronado Cross.
But before that, when he comes in the house, we see Indiana, the dog, his namesake.
See a dog. Yes.
We see his dog, Indiana. Then he bursts into his dad's office.
His dad's scribbling in something.
Yep.
A little book. He wants, it's like, Dad. And he wants Indy to repeat stuff in Latin.
Yep.
He hears the bugle call. That's his friend with the sheriff. He's going to tell him all about the grave.
And he's, as Connery, Henry Jones Sr. is writing stuff down in his journal and is like scribbling down the drawing of the stuff in there.
We see all this later.
He's like, he's sort of very quietly is just talking to himself, which this comes back later later at the end of the movie. But it's like, may the man who illuminated this illuminate me.
It's such perfect casting. It really is.
Yeah.
You just see Sean Connery. Anyway, and he just walks off because he sees the sheriff coming up, and his friend's got the bugle.
Yep.
Like, I brought the sheriff.
I brought the sheriff, but I did not bring the deputy.
Then someone else has gone to the sheriff, and he took the cross from him.
Yep.
And that's when he gets the hat.
Yes, that's when he gets the hat, because the leader of the treasure hunters was wearing a brown fedora and a leather jacket.
He gets the
and
fedora.
It was made to, it was, everything was sort of positioned when he's first introduced to make you think that was Indy.
Yep.
Make you think that was adult Indy. But no, it was the inspiration for Indy's look.
Yep.
And
I've always liked this guy. Like,
yeah, so he gives Indy his hat.
He has respect.
Yes, he does.
Indy.
He does.
He lost today, kid.
Yeah. But doesn't mean you had to like it. And he gave him his hat.
I like, out.
And that's Indy's hat. Yeah. That's how he got his hat.
Hat. Much better than Panama hat guy.
Yes.
Who wears a Panama hat?
Yeah, because he puts the hat on him, and he looks down, and then he looks up, and it's adult Indy in the rain getting punched in the face by a Panama hat's henchman.
I like that. This is the second time I've had this.
This is the second time I've had to reclaim my property from you.
That's a reclaim, yeah.
And then he's like, it belongs in a museum. So do you.
So do you.
And they're in the middle of a storm on a boat in the ocean. There's waves and lightning strikes.
I would have loved a movie with Panama hat.
Yeah.
What an ass. Well, he's an ass. Anyway.
But yeah, so so he's fighting off Panama Hat's henchmen, trying to retrieve the Cross of Coronado for the second time. And there's a storm, and for some reason on the deck, there's a bunch of barrels of gunpowder.
They established this is the 1930s.
Yes, they established that this is the 1930s this time. It's not 1912 anymore.
It's not even
It's
1712.
no.
Where, you might have a bunch of gunpowder just kind of...
Yeah, just kind of laying around on the deck of your boat. But yeah, so gunpowder ignites, blows up the ship.
Blows up Panama Hat.
Yeah, blows up Panama Hat. Well, we don't know. We don't actually see him die. We just see his Panama hat floating in the water. But Indy managed to grab onto a rope, like a crane rope with a hook on it, and then swung off the side of the boat before it exploded and landed safely in the water, where there just happened to be a life preserver floating by after the boat blew up. They grabbed that, sees Panama Hat's hat floating by, and we are led to believe that Panama Hat is dead, which, I mean, they haven't done anything to go against that.
Say otherwise, because we don't see him again in the movie, and he hasn't been in the other movies, so could obviously be retconned at some point, I guess. But
yeah, could be. But then we'd have to change his name. Because if he lost his Panama Hat, how can he be called Panama Hat? Unless he got a new Panama Hat.
Let's just say explode it.
Yeah. But then we have another one.
Got some Panama Hat on you.
Yes. Yeah, then we get another one of those classic Indy in the classroom scenes. Where
he seems much more together as a professor.
Yes. Than he was in Raiders.
Except not completely, because he spends so much time, like he doesn't, typically, professors will take like sabbatical to do their research, get out in the field and do all their stuff. But he teaches, and then on the weekends,
he goes on his adventures, and then he comes back on Monday, back in the classroom.
But that's why all these kids are angry, because they have no idea what they're going to do.
Yeah,
and they're behind, and
And so he starts going on about how archaeology...
his office, which is like in a closet.
Yeah. And he goes on about how archaeology is finding facts, not truth. The search for facts.
If you want truth.
If you want truth, Professor What's-His-Name's philosophy class is down the hall.
There's no Apple Kid in this one. Why is he not getting an apple?
There's no Apple Kid. And there's no love you written on eyelids. But he also tells them X never marks the spot.
Which will come back later.
Comes back later.
Trying to spell Neolithic.
But after the class dismissed, Marcus Brody comes in, and Indy gives him the cross.
So he gets Brody comes in again, gives him the cross.
Put it in the museum.
This time he can give him something. Last time he was empty-handed.
Yeah.
Except for a few odds and ends.
Yep.
And then he sees like his secretary and his mail. He's got
first he tells his students as they're going out, as they're leaving the classroom, he tells them that he will be in his office for the next hour.
That's right. He does say that.
If they need anything, he will be in his office for the next hour. And so, he gets his mail from his secretary, and he's walking out through the crowds of students that are all wanting to talk to him. What they all wanted to talk to him about, I have no idea. But it's a mob scene out there. They're all like grabbing at him, and I mean, I get it. He's Harrison Ford. He's a good-looking dude.
Most of these kids are probably undergrads, and they're doing this as an elective credit. It's okay.
Yeah. So he goes into his office, shuts the door, looks at his mail, notices he has a package from Venice, and then sneaks out the window because he didn't want to deal with all the students that he just told them that he would be in his office and that he would take each of their concerns in turn.
Getting a sense of why they might have been angry. Anyway.
Yes. Yes.
He said that last Monday.
But then there's...
After he came back from India.
But then there's two mysterious-looking guys in a car outside watching him crawl out the window. And
they approach him.
They approach him. One of them almost headbutts him when they're introducing themselves. He goes to bow and almost smacks him in the face with his forehead. But they take him to Walter Donovan.
I'm sorry, these mysterious people should be a clue to begin with.
Yes. Yeah.
They approach the people like Nazis approach people.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So they take him to Walter Donovan.
But they bring him to Walter Donovan.
Who is having a party who's throwing a party.
His wife's not happy that he's ignoring the guests.
No, she's not. She's livid that he's ignoring the guests.
I'd be afraid of her if I was that woman would poison her.
Yes.
If she had the chance.
Yeah. So Indy and Donovan get into a discussion about the Holy Grail.
Walter Donovan, played by Julian Glover. Always,
Julian Glover, who was
classic.
Who was one of the actors who was also in Star Wars. He was in Empire Strikes Back. General Veers in Empire Strikes Back. And he was in...
Classically trained British actor.
And he was in one of the Bond movies. Yeah, there are a lot of crossover actors from Bond and Star Wars and Indiana Jones. I mean, it makes sense for Star Wars and Indy because they were both, Lucasfilm.
Lucas.
So
I don't think did they ever really say, like, you just know he's a businessman, right? Like, you don't really say.
They don't say what he does. He's a purveyor of rare antiquities.
He's obviously super wealthy.
Or a collector of rare antiquities.
On expeditions.
But
in Venice.
Yeah.
And he's got like this super posh apartment that's like at the top of an apartment. And
because at this point in time, we don't know yet that he's working with the Nazis. So looking back at it, the Nazis could have bankrolled all that. So he doesn't have any money, and the Nazis are paying for his apartment and paying for him to hire all these people to go look for the Holy Grail.
But he comes in because he wants him to translate this tablet.
Mm-hmm. But they only have like
his people
half of
on Earth. On Earth, right? And he reads his name, talks about the Grail of Christ chalice that Jesus would use in the Last Supper. So obviously the eyes. And they have a long conversation about legends of what happened in the Grail. Children's bedtime stories, as they like to call them.
So Indy tells Donovan that he's talking to the wrong Jones. The Grail was his father's obsession.
Yes.
And Donovan had told Indy that the person that they had on the case disappeared, and that's why they were trying to hire Indy. Right. But then, after Indy tells him that his father is the one he should be talking to, Donovan reveals that his father is the one that disappeared.
Yep. His father is the one gone missing.
So Indy takes the job to go and try to rescue his father.
To
find out what happened to him.
He goes back to his dad's house.
Yes, he goes back to his dad's house, finds it ransacked, and then
Brody's with him.
Yes. And Indy realizes that it was ransacked because he has this package from Venice, and the last place that his father was seen was Venice. So it must be a package from his father. So he opens it. It's his Grail diary.
And that's what prompts him to decide to take Donovan's offer.
Yes.
Brody says he'll take a ticket too.
Yeah. I'll tell him we'll take two. Yeah. So then he goes and agrees. Yeah, he agrees to go. So they arrive in Venice.
Well, before that, they're on the plane about to leave.
Ah, yes.
It's chartered by...
Nice try, Laoshe. Oh, wrong movie.
Don't trust anyone.
Yes. He tells Indy, don't trust anyone. Donovan tells Indy, don't trust anyone. Classic case of foreshadowing.
A Dr. Fisher also.
Dr. Schneider.
Dr. Fisher was working with his dad.
Dr. Schneider.
Sorry.
Yes, Dr. Schneider. I don't know why you're saying Fisher, but it's Dr. Schneider who's working with Henry Jones Sr. And so they're supposed to, when they get to Venice, they're supposed to meet up with Dr. Schneider.
Brody's already looking concerned. Brody's already a very different movie.
Yeah.
Raiders.
Yeah.
He's much more absent-minded in this movie.
Brody's very different than he was in Raiders. But also, he wasn't in much of Raiders, though.
He was not.
He's in a lot more of Last Crusade than he was in Raiders. So
he's got 5 minutes of screen time in Raiders.
So we see a lot more of him.
15 minutes, 20 minutes here. So he's...
No, I'd say he has more than that. I'd say he has more than 15 or 20 minutes in this one. He's got scenes scattered throughout the movie.
Yeah, and then
he's in pretty much the entire third act.
This movie, everyone's in it.
Yeah, he's in pretty much the entire third act of the movie. So I'd say he's probably in a good 30 to 45 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, so you're right.
But yeah,
no. So they leave. You get the classic map playing, red line.
Yes.
They land in Venice.
No Indy movie would be complete without the map while traveling, showing where they're going.
And they land, and they're wondering what this Dr. Schneider is going to look like.
Yeah.
maybe he'll know us.
And then Allison Duty walks up. Nobody's expecting to see Allison Duty as Dr. Elsa Schneider.
No one expects Allison Duty.
And nobody expects how much of a duty vag she's going to turn into later.
No. Even beyond just being a Nazi,
a Nazi sympathizer. Is she actually a Nazi, or is she just a Nazi sympathizer?
That's a good point.
But also, if you're a Nazi sympathizer, then you might as well just be a Nazi. So
true. But, by the way, she is a Bond girl also.
She is.
Not a Connery Bond girl, but a Dalton Bond girl.
Yes.
Still a Bond girl. Yeah. She's also Major League too. So that's like a third credit.
Yeah.
But she knew it was Indy right away.
Yeah, so as soon as Indy realizes that she's not some wrinkled old professor guy, he starts hitting on her. Steals a flower for her.
She's like, it's going to die tomorrow.
Introduces himself. She says, "You have your father's eyes and my mother's ears, but the rest belongs to you."
He has her penis. I guess she has his penis.
We get more into that later.
She has multiple. This movie.
But yeah, so they're walking by a flower cart. He steals a flower, and she complains that it's just gonna wither and die. And he says, "Oh, then I'll steal you another one tomorrow." All just bad flirty lines. But he's Indy, so he can get away with it.
Not work on Marion. Marion would be like,
no, yeah, Marion would be. She'd punch him for those. She'd flat out punch him for those. For trying to throw those lines her way. But he's Indy, so he can get away with it.
Anyway, so she tells him that he disappeared while at the library.
So they go to the library, which is an old church.
Old church, it's a big thing.
And there just happens to be a drawing of the stained glass window in the Grail Diary. The stained glass window that's in the library,
right?
Formerly a church.
So Indy concludes that his dad was not looking for a book in the library. He was looking for the tomb.
Yes, the tomb of Sir Richard.
Of the knight that came back after finding
the Holy Grail
with one of his brothers.
Because there were 3 brothers who found it during the Last Crusade. And 2 of them returned extremely old, died of extreme old age. And the other one, presumably, had stayed behind with the Grail.
Yeah, he's never seen again, for now.
Mm-hmm.
So he was looking for the tomb of Sir Richard, one of the knights, and not actually looking for a book.
The knight who supposedly had the rest of the tablet inscribed on his shield.
Right, because you got to figure that, the rest of the shield is still a reasonable thing to guess. And he sees Roman numerals in there, and they start looking at them, and they go 1 and 4, and then he sees a 10. And
that's 3, 7, and 10.
Is it 3, 7? Yeah, that's
3,
right.
7, 10, because there's 3 in the window, then 3 on the column, 7 in the window, 7 on the other column, and then 10 in the window.
There's 10.
And then 10 nowhere to be found, so they're all looking all over the place for the 10.
And as most people would know with Roman numerals, X is 10.
Yes. So Indy runs up the spiral staircase, looks down at the floor.
He's looking around the big he sees
X.
And he runs up the staircase.
There's a big X on the floor.
Marks the spot.
X marks the spot. He just, 15 minutes ago, told all his students that X never marks the spot. He's going to have to go back and apologize to those students for lying to them. Because here's a time when X does mark the spot. Then I love this. I love the sequence when they're trying to break through the tile, and he grabs the.
I wonder, what part of that library is roped off?
Yes, what part was roped off? Because he uses the rope, the stand for the rope, the velvet rope, and maybe it's just the older book section is roped off because they're fragile and whatnot.
I
old
get
brittle
that,
paper.
But that's not going to stop a lot of people.
No, it's not. But maybe it's maybe Venetians are more respected, more respectable of the rope. Maybe they see a velvet rope and they're like, oh, can't go past that.
It is. Well, granted, it's northern Italy. but parts of Italy like did that in mob-controlled areas.
Yeah, I mean, could be. Or maybe, if people in Venice, went through velvet ropes and they'd have their eyes plucked out, and that's where the whole Venetian blinds came from.
Anyway, so he starts.
I'm sorry for that one.
He's pounding the floor. Meanwhile, the little librarian is like stamping books, right?
Yes, the librarian. I love it. Librarian stamping books. As soon as he stamps it, is when Indy hits. And
for those that are a little bit younger, it used to be they would stamp the due date in your book.
Yes, there used to be these things called libraries where you would go and they were just full of books. No, there's still libraries around.
We forgot. The duty badge had to go off and talk to a librarian to try to get them to stay long.
Yes, to try to, because they were about to close. Library was about to close. But yeah, so while the librarian is stamping the books, he just happens to hit the stamp at the same time that Indy hits the floor, hits the tile, and it just makes a huge crashing sound every time. And then finally, he stamps it, and it happens again, and he just sort of looks at the stamp and puts the stamp aside. He's like, okay, I'm done now.
Hey, hats off to him. Perfect extra.
Yep.
Just told him all.
So Indy was able to break through the tiles. They were thick tiles. But yeah, so they get the hole in the ground.
And Dr. Schneider and Indy go through, and Indy gives the book to
Brody.
Safekeeping.
Mm-hmm. He takes out, the rubbing that he made of the stone tablet at Donovan's house, and gives the rest of it, the rest of the book to Brody. And then they go down there while they're exploring the catacombs under the old church. Then they come across a painting of the Holy Grail. You get a little nod to Raiders because Elsa asks what it is, and he says the Holy Grail. She's like, "Are you sure?" Pretty sure.
I would know. Meanwhile, while they're proceeding,
I think it's the Ark of... They say the Holy Grail. I think I said Holy Grail. It's the Ark of the Covenant.
The Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, I think I said Holy Grail.
That's why he's pretty sure. It's
Ark of the Covenant. But yeah.
Meanwhile, this group of dudes in mustaches and white suits and fezzes.
Yes. Are watching.
Knock out Brody.
Yes.
What a great collection of hats.
Yes, this movie has a lot of great hats.
You have a Panama hat, you have a fedora,
you have fez. And there's also turbans later. There's a lot of great hats in this movie. Like, I think there may be more like different styles of hats in this movie than there are on any of the other Indy movies.
Yeah, definitely. Like, they get what? You have probably have a few turbans and like Raiders also, but then it's just the fedora. Yeah. Anyway, they go on and they go and eventually they come across an area with rats.
Yeah, and then
they find Indy, Richard.
Yeah.
They rubbing and
but no, Indy realizes that the water is mixed with petroleum.
Yes.
Under there, and says that he should dig a well down there, drill a well, and live off of the money and retire. But uses that petroleum to make a torch from a bone that he found, a femur. He wrapped some cloth around it and then dipped it in the petroleum and lit it. Which then, why didn't that ignite the rest of the petroleum? Because there were pieces of the cloth, burning pieces falling into the water when they're going through there. So, yeah. Anyway, but they make it to to Sir Richard's casket.
And he says, Giddy's a schoolboy.
Yes, Giddy's a schoolboy. Sees the shield.
His dad is afraid of rats.
Yes, he never would have made it past the rats.
He would never made it past the rats.
He's scared to death of them. But so he sees a shield. He completes the rubbing, gets the other half of it on there, and then those same guys with the fezzes, the Fez family,
they drop a match.
They drop a match in the petroleum and it lights, which is even more confusing because all the burning pieces of cloth that were falling in there didn't ignite it, but a match does.
Hey,
it was in the script, but yeah. So when Indy sees the fire coming, flips the casket over, They climb underneath it, so they're protected in the water, and they have enough air in the casket to be able to breathe for, a short time. Meanwhile, the rats are trying to escape the fire. They're climbing all up in Elsa's hair. And, Indy leaves her. Indy leaves her for a minute so he can find a way out.
He just loves her permanently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, should have. So they end up climbing up through a manhole right in the middle of an outdoor dining patio.
Yeah, a nice little Venetian cafe.
These two soaking wet people climbing up from the sewer.
Well, he's clearly an American, which...
Yeah.
I mean, Americans. And then you see the Fez family running out of the library and spot them.
Yep, so Fez fam comes out and they're chasing them. They get onto boats. They get onto really cool wooden motorboats.
Really cool wooden boats.
Really cool wooden motorboats.
I'm kind of disappointed. It's like, it's Venice. They should have had a gondola chase.
Yes, they should have had a gondola chase. But I guess gondolas don't go as fast as motorboats. But yes, it should have been a gondola chase. So yeah, they have a high-speed chase in the water. And you get the whole, like, the two ships getting pushed together and them not being able to hear each other because Elsa's driving the boat and Andy's in the back.
And she's the duty badge. So this, she's not thinking clearly, obviously.
Yeah, he's like, don't go between them. Are you crazy? Don't go between them. Go between them. Are you crazy? And she goes between them, and they barely make it out before they smash together.
But some of the Fez family does not.
Yeah, but one of the Fez family boats went around the big ships, and the other one went between them, just like they did. And they got caught in the middle and blew up. Then Kazim from the Fez family, yes. The Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword.
As we find out in the
he jumps onto Indy's boat and has a fight with Indy. While they're drifting toward a boat,
an open propeller.
Yes, a giant ship with a propeller that is half out of the water. Why is that propeller out of the water? That propeller should be fully submerged in the water. But they had shot up the engine so that it doesn't work, so they're just drifting into it.
It's like that's a giant ass boat. Like I don't know Venice really well, but like I'm
pretty sure the Titanic was never docked there.
Deep of waters. And even at that, again, why is the
propeller out of the water?
Not submerged.
I mean, if it was like completely out, then I could understand. Like maybe they're putting the boat in dry dock or something. Yeah, like work on it, but it's there. The propeller is half out of the water, and it's spinning.
And now it's chopping up the wooden boats.
And it's chopping up the wooden boat that they're fighting on. And finally, Kazim.
And he's like, why are you trying to kill us? Because you seek the Holy Grail.
Mm-hmm.
My father was seeking the Holy Grail.
He's like, if you let me go, I'll tell you where he is.
My soul's ready. Is yours? And obviously, Indy's soul is not ready.
Obviously, Indy's soul is not ready. Even though he had this big adventure with the Ark of the Covenant, like a year or two before this.
He ended up knocking up Miriam and ditching her.
Yeah. But yeah, so.
And created Shia LaDouche.
Yes. But that's the next movie.
But they also comes back and they both get on. They
get on the other boat.
Talks about being the brotherhood of the cruciform form.
Yes, the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword. And he's got a big tattoo on his chest.
Sexy dude.
Yeah. He tells him that his father is being held at the Castle Broomhold on the Germany-Austrian border.
And he tells him like their group's mission is to keep the secret of the Holy Grail.
Yes.
And he wants to know, to seek the cup of Christ for his glory or God's glory. He just wants to find his father.
Yeah.
And now Yolanda wants to kill him. Oh, go about your way.
So then we get one of those classic 80s shots of
the Austrian-German border.
a storm with a castle, with a European castle. While lightning striking.
Well, before
very
that,
Transylvania looking.
They go back to the apartment they're staying
yes,
in. Donovan's apartment. And Elsa's and Indy's apartment has both been ransacked.
But Elsa is playing her
about the diary.
Elsa's playing her phonograph too loud, so she couldn't hear it all happening. She's in the bathroom listening to music.
Stupid Elsa.
Yeah.
Stupid kid. And it's like, oh, this is what they were looking for. And she, shows her the diary.
Yeah.
And then they have sex.
Yes, and then they start arguing, and then they have sex.
With Donovan.
Yeah.
What's going through?
Because Indy hates fast women, and Elsa hates arrogant men.
Donovan had to hear them, right?
Oh, yeah, he had to have heard them.
The photograph's not playing anymore.
No, it's not. He had to have heard everything they were doing in there.
And then you get the classic is the storm of the castle.
Yes.
And they knock on the door.
But first, they trade coats and hats. Because Elsa was wearing a beret and a trench coat, and Indy was wearing his Indy clothes. He was wearing his fedora and his leather jacket.
That's right.
And so they trade. So then Indy is wearing the beret and trench coat, but it's too small for him, so he just has it over his shoulders. And he's pretending to be a Scottish guy.
If you are a Scottish lord, then I am Mickey Mouse.
I love that guy.
And we have many
tapestries. This is a castle, and we have many tapestries. But if you are a Scottish lord, you're a Scottish noble, I am Mickey Mouse. How dare he? How dare he?
I hope the Nazis didn't kill that poor butler.
Unless that butler was a Nazi, then yeah.
Then they can kill him.
And they can kill him. But yeah, but I mean, for all we know, he didn't know that there were Nazis in that castle.
He just knew his dad was held there. That's true.
Yeah. That butler knew he could have just been the butler for the castle. He didn't know that his boss was, running Nazi poker games downstairs.
Well, it seemed like there was some secret rooms in that castle.
Mm-hmm.
He just might have opened the doors and served some dinners.
Yeah. We don't know.
Don't know. Just looking around and trying to figure out where his dad is. And like, does he figure out what room it is? That's why he knows where to fly into? Like, I'm trying to remember that.
No, yeah. So they're walking down the hall after they knock out the butler. They're walking down the hall, right. And Indy walks up to a door. And he's like, "My dad's in here." And Elsa's like, "How do you know?" And he's like, he points up and there's wires up, because they don't alarm doors that prisoners aren't in. So they go into the next door.
That's right.
And Indy, throws his whip out there, hooks it onto a wire, swings across, and then swings into the room that his father is in. So he breaks through the window. He gets hit in the head with a vase. And that's our introduction to the current day Henry Jones Sr. Junior. It is you, Junior. And then, Indy starts talking, and Henry Sr. starts lamenting because he broke a Ming vase.
And the head.
Yeah, it breaks the heart and the head. And then he gets excited. It's a fake. You can tell by the cross section. Sorry about your head, though.
This casual prisoner break and just talking about imitation faces.
Sorry about your head, though. But yeah, so they do their brief catching up, and
Indy tells them like the city where they need to start from, which was all
Alexandretta.
The second piece of the
Alexandretta. But
they were a rat stab.
Yeah. The tomb of Sir Richard. You saw him?
But I love it because, like, his dad's so excited. His daddy is just, you can tell this is like his life work.
Yeah.
His life's work.
Yes.
And he gets to experience it through his son.
Yeah.
Right? And they play it all together.
Yeah.
What's not to like? Till the Nazis come in.
Yeah, and then the Nazis come in, take him away, and that's when Henry tells him that they should have mailed it to the Marx Brothers.
Yeah. You didn't bring the diary.
You didn't bring the diary with you, did you? They should have mailed it to the Marx Brothers.
Perfect, like, father, like, upbraiding.
Comes in to save him, and then he just starts bitching at him for bringing the diary with him.
Who's going to save you,
Junior?
I told. Oh.
Takes up the machine gun, just drops all the Nazis. I told you, don't call me Junior.
Look what you've done.
Look what you did. You just killed a bunch of Nazis. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But
established, Henry didn't like Nazis.
But then they go out there,
then,
and Vogel is standing there with a gun to Elsa's head.
Yep.
And he's telling Indy to drop the gun and give him the diary. And Henry Sr. is telling him that they're lying. But Indy won't believe him. And he drops the gun. Vogel lets go of Elsa. She comes up, takes the diary out of Indy's pocket.
You should have listened to your father.
And then Indy asks how he knew that she was a Nazi. She talks in her sleep. Which I believe I had heard somewhere that was actually ad-libbed. That Connery just said it.
Well, I mean,
they went with it.
They kind of confirmed that.
Yeah, that it wasn't in the script. But then, so what I love about that is...
I didn't trust her. Why did you?
What I love about the whole she talks in her sleep part is the little smirk that Connery gives after he says it. Because then he just looks at him. Connery kind of just smiles at him. Just gives this little knowing smirk.
Hey, son,
yeah.
I boned her. I didn't trust her. I slept with her.
I didn't trust her. Why did you?
You didn't take my advice. Yeah, there's Donovan.
So they tie him up back to back in a room. And then, so Indy tells Henry Sr. to reach into his pocket and pull out his Lucky Charm to help him get through the rope.
I guess before this, like, they don't fully execute them yet.
Ah, yes,
because
true.
They discover lost pages.
Yes, they discover that there's lost pages from a couple pages were torn out.
And Schneider quickly deduces that Brody has it.
And a map. The map is gone too. A map with no names. And then they go through how they say goodbye in Austria, and then how they say goodbye in Germany. And they both preferred the Austrian way.
What if they said goodbye the same way? Vogel needed to kiss them.
Vogelman. Oh, yeah.
It would probably have the same effect anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, so they leave them in the room alone. Andy has Henry reach into his pocket and pull out his Lucky Charm. He finds out it's a cigarette lighter. And then he gives him he's surprised that he has a lighter in his pocket. And says it almost disapprovingly. You know, I mean, you don't have to be a smoker to carry a lighter. Fire comes in handy, especially if you're getting into the kind of scrapes Indiana Jones gets into.
Yeah.
You could always use some fire.
Quite frequently.
Yeah, so he tells him to burn through the ropes, and Henry burns his hand and drops the lighter, lights the carpet on fire.
And the floor.
I hate to tell you, son, the floor's on fire. And the chair.
Meanwhile, Nazis have discovered that Brody's been captured. He went to go see Sulla. Sulla tried to leave
because they told him that they'd never find Brody because He speaks 7 languages. He knows every local custom. He'll blend in, and they'll never find him. Plus, he's got a 2-day head start. And then it cuts over to Brody asking if anybody speaks English or maybe ancient Greek.
Excuse me, do you know ancient Greek?
Runs into Sala.
I would love to discuss this Septuagint with you. It's anyway. But Sala bumps into him, and Sala's going to help him. Sala's resourceful.
Yeah,
but
he's just clueless. Brody's just clueless, and yeah.
Run.
Yeah, the Nazis go, do you have your papers? Yes, I just finished reading it. Here you go. Tries to hand him a newspaper. Punches the Nazi out. So I'm glad that Sala got to punch some Nazis in this one. He didn't get that in Raiders. He didn't get to punch any Nazis. Indy got to punch a lot of Nazis in Raiders, and Indy gets to punch a lot of Nazis in Last Crusade. But I'm glad that Sala got to share in the Nazi punching.
He did. Everyone should share in Nazi punching.
Yes.
Anyway, it doesn't really work because Brady still runs onto the truck.
Yep. Well, they don't know that it's a truck. They think it's just a storefront, and so Sala tells them to run in there. Yes. And then Sala's standing out there like squaring off, about to fight off all the Nazis. Because he's a badass.
It's actually a truck.
And it's a truck. And it drives off with Brody in it.
And so now the Nazis have declared war on the Jody boys.
Mm-hmm.
Have the okay to execute them. Meanwhile, like we said, their room is on fire. And
yes, the room's on fire. They move they're able to scoot the chairs that they're tied to into the fireplace and find a secret trigger that opens the door. It's the secret door.
It's the secret door. And they go into a communications room.
Yes. Alarm!
She looks at the nods and smiles. Alarm! And then they get the thing and like, oh, wait! Like...
Then they spin around a couple more times while Nazis are shooting at them. And then they end up getting themselves untied. And when the Nazis go around and see that they're not there, they drop down from above, shut the door, and grab a bust of Hitler. and wedge it in there so the door won't open again.
No, it's such an odd layout because, like, all of a sudden, like, they have no place to go. Mm-hmm. Like, Henry has to sit on a chair to open up a stairwell.
Often I find that if I just sit down and think, and he leans back, and the stairs form, an opportunity presents itself.
Several boats docked at the bottom. And they put stuff in the one and untie it. And Henry tries to get into it. And he tells him to wait.
Henry tosses his bag to Indy, and Indy tosses it back. And then they send it off. But if you look closely, you can see, because there's like a tarp on the boat, you can see as the boat's pulling away, there's a person under the tarp that reaches up and grabs the rudder, and he's directing the boat.
I have not seen that. I'll look at that next time. I don't think I've seen that before.
But yeah, so the Nazis come out there, chase them out there, see the boat going off. They jump into a boat, which I don't understand why they didn't wait 5 more seconds before coming out of the crate in the motorcycle. Wait for the Nazi boats to chase to get like going and then get out of there.
Yeah, a little bit further and then leave. Because somehow there is a motorcycle with a sidecar.
Yes, there's a motorcycle with a sidecar inside a crate.
Just waiting for them.
I've seen that motorcycle, by the way. Like the actual one from the movie.
Cool.
It's awesome. Right next to Kit from Knight Rider.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. That's an interesting combo.
Yeah. Yeah, they had him at the Comic-Con in Kansas City several years ago. But yeah, so they get into a motorcycle chase. Great motorcycle chase.
again, this is classic Indy now.
Yeah.
Like Raiders, right? Chased all vehicles. Decide it's not like a truck, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's throwing people off of a horse. It's a motorcycle chase. And
so each way he finds an interesting way to kill each of the Nazis that's chasing him. They go through a checkpoint, a gate, and Indy grabs a flagpole, jousts with one of them, and then takes the broken piece of the pole and throws it into the spokes of another one. That's my favorite. Just throws it into the spokes of the front wheel, sends that Nazi flying. And then after they defeat them all, then they drive up and stop, and Indy's kind of looking back at them as they're driving away and laughs at himself. And then once again, Henry gives him a disapproving look. I mean, is Henry Jones Sr. Is he a Nazi sympathizer? Because he's upset that his son is killing Nazis. So they get to a crossroads. They get to a fork in the road, and Berlin is one direction, and Venice is the other direction. And they're talking about where they need to go. And Brody's in Venice, but the diary's in Berlin.
The diaries.
It's like, but we have the map. There's more than the diary than just the map. So they go to Berlin, and there's in the middle, and so they get to Berlin. In the middle of a book burning.
So I wouldn't have to remember. Good old Nazi book burning.
I wrote it in my diary so I wouldn't have to remember. The three trials. The three trials to get to the Grail.
There's always baby traps.
3 tests. But yeah, so they go to Berlin, middle of a book burning, a Nazi rally, and Indy is disguised as a Nazi.
And he's looking for the duty badge.
He's looking for duty badge. And he finds her, and he tells her to give him the diary, and she won't do it. And he grabs her by the throat, and he says, all I have to do is squeeze. And she says, all I have to do is scream. But if he's squeezing, she's not going to be able to scream.
Nope.
If he cuts off her air, she's not going to be able to get the air out of her mouth to be able to scream.
Oh, no. He would easily kill her.
Yeah. So she says she has a tiny neck.
Gone with it.
She had a tiny neck. He was using one hand, and his hand was completely around her throat. She gives him the diary, and then he's pushing his way through the crowd and bumps into none other than Hitler himself, who is played by another Empire Strikes Back actor. The dude that played Admiral Ozzel in Empire Strikes Back plays Hitler.
I was trying to look up his name. I'm glad he had that ready. I know that there's like a bunch of the Gestapo that are from like the previous movies, like Ronald Lacey and other, not even Gestapo, but some of the Zeppelin passengers are like various movies. Like there's Norman Gay, he's one of the ghosts in The Shining. Remember who played Hitler? Looking it up real quick. Oh yeah, Pat Roach is a Gestapo also.
Yes, he is. Pat Roach, who of course played the Nazi that the big Nazi Indy was fighting with in Raiders, who ended up getting chopped up by the airplane propeller, and he also played the big thuggy that Indy was fighting on the rock crusher.
Michael Shear
conveyor belt.
Yeah, that is him, isn't it? Yeah. I don't know if I realized that. Yeah, I mean, they did a good job making him look like Hitler.
Yeah, they did.
Like, Admiral Ozzel, you look at him, like, yeah, he's got a blonder, longer Hitler stash.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah. So he bumps into Hitler.
But he's got Hitler's, like, I've always found that, like, maybe it's because, like, I don't like Nazis. I just thought, like, why are people going for Hitler's autograph much like any politician's autograph?
Yeah.
Especially Hitler's autograph.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Nazi rally, so they're all fans of Hitler that are there, except Indy and his dad. But the Nazis don't know that. They don't know they're there. But, yeah, and, so...
and he tells it well. He's face-to-face with evil and has his little diary. And
he's holding the diary up, and Hitler takes it. He doesn't hand it to him. He's just holding it up, and Hitler grabs it, takes it from him, and one of the Gestapo gives him a pencil, and he signs the diary. And then cans it back to him.
And Hitler probably doesn't know much about all what's going on. He wants the Grail.
Yeah.
Anyway.
He doesn't realize that it's a Grail diary that he's signing. He just thinks it's an autograph book.
So now Indy and Henry need to escape, and we see them getting tickets on a Zeppelin.
Mm-hmm. Which Pat Roach was actually cut from the movie, his Gestapo, because he was supposed to be in the Zeppelin scene.
Ah.
Because when I mean, I think you can still briefly see him in there. Yeah. They're on there and they're on the Zeppelin. Indy and Henry finally get a chance to sit down and breathe for a minute, and they get to talking there, and they're having the conversation about how the last time they actually sat down for a drink, Indy had a milkshake, and how they never talked. We want to talk about. And of course, Henry puts him on the spot, and he can't think of anything that he wants to talk about. But they see Vogel. Oh, and also, funny little thing here. So while they were filming that scene, while they were sitting at the table on the Zeppelin, it was so hot when they were filming it that neither Harrison Ford nor Sean Connery were wearing pants when they were sitting at that table. They were just sitting there in their underwear. Because, I mean, the camera they're sitting at a table. The camera never shows their legs.
Yeah. No. This is focus on
it just shows them from the tabletop up. But it was so hot that day that neither one of them was wearing pants.
All right, I'm buying it. So cool. I'm okay with it.
Yeah. I heard that in an interview with about, I think it might have been an interview with Harrison Ford. I don't know. It was an interview. It was some behind the scenes thing or interview thing about the movie. Like they were talking about it, and how neither one of them was. They were just both sitting there in their underwear. But all right. So they see Vogel going around checking to see if they're on there. Yeah, Indy sees him. So Indy goes off, pulls the ticket taker aside. I would imagine knocks him out and takes his jacket, but he might have just, paid him for his jacket or something.
Yeah.
Comes in dressed as the ticket taker.
Ticket, please.
Tickets, please. Tickets, please. Tickets, please. Goes up to Vogel. Right after Vogel finds Henry Sr., reading a newspaper. And before he can do anything to Henry, Indy walks up behind him and asks for tickets, please. Vogel turns around and he punches him in the face. And then throws him out the window, and he lands on a pile of luggage. And that is the scene where after he falls in the luggage, that's where you may or may not be able to still see Pat Roach standing on the side.
Oh, okay.
Because he was supposed to be part of that scene, and then they cut it. So it ended up just being Vogel shaking his fist at the Zeppelin flying off,
screaming in German, and then flies off.
But yeah, I guess there was that scene was supposed to be longer with Pat Roach as part of the scene on the ground. But
next time.
Before long, they realize that the Zeppelin's turning around and going back.
Before it turns around, they discuss diary. And
yes, they discuss the diary.
Booby traps.
Yes, they do.
The breath of God, word of God, and the lion's mouth.
The path of God.
Path of God.
The breath of God, the word of God, and the path of God. Only with a leap from the lion's head.
It was so important. And he kind of said that too earlier. Really go deeper into why it's important that they have diary. Which is important because there's going to be a bunch of air people dying later because of it. But yeah, Indy feels the plane turn around, realizes that they're going back to Germany, and thought that their would take longer for them to realize the communications were out. And so they hijack, I guess.
They go down. There's a biplane attached to the bottom of the Zeppelin, which
I would think the Nazis would guard that battery.
Yes, you'd think. I mean, is it supposed to be, like in case the Zeppelin gets attacked or something, then somebody can hop in there and fly over? Because it had a gun on it. Or is it supposed to be like a lifeboat kind of thing that can only take two people? And one has to be a pilot.
The pilot and the top-ranking Nazi.
So that never really made sense to me why there's a plane on the bottom of the Zeppelin. But it would kind of make sense, I guess, if it was like, it's a Nazi Zeppelin. If the Allied forces, attacked it, somebody could hop in there and try to fight them off.
Yeah, totally.
So Indy and Henry get in there and they go flying, and a couple of Nazi planes come after them.
I never knew you fly.
Fly, yes. Land, no. Yes, he learned how to fly after the airplane fiasco in Temple of Doom.
Yes, but he never learned how to fly.
Yeah, he never learned how to land.
He jumped out, but racked. Anyway, they get attacked by more Germans.
Yep, and Henry is sitting in the gunner's seat. And while trying to shoot at the Nazis in the air, he checks his watch when Indy tells him that they're coming in at 11 o'clock. What happens at 11 o'clock?
12, 11,
11 o'clock. 12, 11, 10, 11 o'clock.
Meanwhile, he then proceeds to shoot the tail.
Yes. I'm sorry, son. They got us. So they crash land.
I love that there's a plane that still pursues them.
Yeah.
After they crash land.
They crash land, and then there's a guy changing the tire on his car, and he gets the tire on there, and as he's going to put the hubcap on, the car drives off.
That's right.
Because Indy stole it. Indy stole a dude's car.
He stole a quiet little farmer's car. Mm-hmm. Probably a simple...
Now, he's lucky he had gotten all those lug nuts on there. Otherwise, that wheel would have fallen right off.
Stole at the right time, that's right.
Mm-hmm. So one of the planes is coming down, shooting at him. They go through a tunnel. Plane goes through the tunnel too, rips both wings off, and then they just sort of like drive up next to each other. They look at each other as they're going by. Which, that tunnel was not wide enough to have a car and a plane side by side in it.
Oh. There's a reason why the wings got sheared off.
I know, but when they drove into the tunnel, it looked like it was only like a one-lane tunnel.
Yeah.
Only enough room for the car. And somehow, when the plane goes through and rips the wings off, it goes next to the car like it's a second lane.
They can look at each other.
They look at each other. Like, what's going on?
Before the plane explodes.
Yeah, the plane gets through the tunnel and explodes. They drive through the flaming wreckage. And then the other plane drops a bomb right in front of them, and they end up crashing into the crater. And they get out, and they're on the beach, and the plane's coming at them, shooting at them, and Henry Sr. gets an idea. He pulls out his umbrella, starts clucking like a chicken. Opens and closes his umbrellas at the birds that are there. And they fly up, get caught up in the engine of the plane, and the plane crashes. Henry Sr. got his first kill. And then comes one of my favorite lines.
Yes.
I suddenly remembered my Charlemagne. Let my armies be the rocks and the trees and the birds in the sky. Love that line.
A great line. He's just got his umbrella that's closed up now. It's over his shoulder. He's just walking proudly on this beach.
Because he just killed a guy. He just killed a Nazi. And now he understands why Indy was so excited about killing Nazis earlier.
And now after this, go back to Donovan, trades with the Sultan of Alexandria, and now they need tanks. And what tanks you got in the desert, right? Trade him a Rolls Royce.
Mm-hmm. Rolls Royce Phantom 2. Now he says that they're going to pay him with gold donated by German citizens, so generously donated. What they don't tell him, which is strongly implied, is that it's gold stolen by the Jewish people. It wasn't donated. It was gold that was stolen by the Jewish people that the Nazis were corralling. But yeah, the Sultan sees the Rolls Royce Phantom 2, and I even like the color.
It's an easy set.
You have camels, provisions, desert vehicles, and tanks. You're welcome.
He does such a good job. Kazim is still there, right?
Yes.
We see him.
Kazim's still sort of watching everything.
He's observing all this.
He's observing. He's the outside observer.
Obviously, he knew there was shady shit that was going on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get the ground.
Yep.
He's still on the case.
Yep.
So they have the tanks now, and
they have their tank going through the desert, and Brody is on it as a captive. They have him prisoner on the tank, and Indy and Henry and Sala are on a ridge looking, and Indy's got binoculars, and they see the glare. Yes, they borrowed Sala's brother-in-law's car to get there, and they see the glare from the binoculars.
Indy's not being too careful.
And Indy, right when Indy tells Henry that they're well out of range, the Nazis fire a shot from the tank, and it blows up Sala's brother-in-law's car right behind him.
And then they don't know right away it's Indy, and that Schneider is certain that, right? All of a sudden.
Yeah, so then the Brotherhood of the Cruciform Sword people, the Fez family, jumps up from behind rocks and starts shooting at the Nazis.
I guess Jones all right. But it's not. That gives Jones like the proper cover now to get out there and attack them. Get his dad and do what else the government wants him to do.
So Indy goes to try to get horses because he sees horses tied up, and Sulla sees camels tied up. And so Sulla mentions the camels, and Indy's like, "No camels!" And so Indy goes and gets horses. Sulla goes and gets camels, and Indy yells at him, he's like, "I told you, no camels!" And Sulla's like, "It's compensation for my brother-in-law's car."
Meanwhile, it's just like
I told you, no camels. You have 5 camels.
One for each day of the week. Sure, I don't appreciate the gesture. I don't know. Anyway, so they pursue chase on because tanks going to the canyon of the crescent moon.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Henry Sr. gets taken by the Nazis,
right?
Put on the tank with Brody.
Forgot to mention that. Thank you.
Yes. And Indy chases down the tank on a horse. They try to shoot him with the side cannon, but Indy picks up a rock off the ground and shoves it in the barrel.
Punches.
And it just splits the barrel. Just like when Bugs Bunny would put his finger in the end of Elmer Fudd's gun. It would just banana the barrel. Split it like a banana peel. But yeah, so then we have Henry and Marcus get reunited after years since the last time they saw each other. And, they do their little secret handshake.
Secret handshake. Yeah. Meanwhile, still a chase in the tank.
Yep.
They're still trying to shoot Saul and out of the desert, or run him out of the desert, whatever way you want to look at it. Because at this point, the Fez family has been all killed.
Yeah, but Indy goes to climb onto the tank, and he's holding on to the side gun, and somehow he gets the strap from his satchel wrapped around it, which last time we saw the satchel was under his jacket, and then all of a sudden it's outside of his jacket and looped over the gun. So that's just one of those things that we're supposed to accept, I guess. The magic satchel strap.
But now, he's got to be dragged by a tank.
Yep. But right before they run him into the side of a cliff wall, he manages to get his strap loose and get up onto the tank.
And the driver gets shot in the head.
Yes, the driver gets shot in the head because when Indy's fighting one of the Nazis, he drops the gun, and
that's right.
Henry Sr. picks it up, and he's trying to fight with one of the Nazis, trying to stop him from shooting people. And so Henry pulls out his fountain pen and squirts ink into the guy's eye. And that causes the Nazi to pull the trigger, and the bullet ricochets until it hits the driver. And then you get Brody's, "The pen is mightier than the sword."
So Brody. But
Henry, the pen!
First collapses on the lever and steers it towards a cliff.
Yep. Well, that's what gets Indy out of getting run into the rock.
Yes.
Because it veers off of there, and then he climbs up after that.
Punches him off the tank and come up, and then doing it.
Yeah, because Indy had gotten knocked off the tank, and that's why he was hanging on the gun. But yeah, so
he saves his dad. His dad falls on it and gets his whip out and saves him before he falls over the ledge of the tank and gets crushed by it.
Yep, and then Sulla rides up on a horse and helps Henry Sr. off of the tank tread.
But, it's still driving towards.
But, we didn't mention how Brody got off the tank, though. They were outside of the tank before Henry Sr. got knocked onto the tread. Yeah, he asks, how does one get off of something like this? And Indy goes to punch a Nazi, brings his arm back, and elbows Brody in the face. And he just falls back off of the tank.
Probably the appropriate way for Brody to get knocked off the tank. Or get off the tank.
Yeah, but then the tank is going toward a cliff. And Indy's fighting with Vogel. And they look up, the cliff's getting closer. And all of a sudden, Indy's hat blows off of his head. And that's when you know shit's about to get real. Tank goes off the cliff.
Jumps towards the back of the tank.
And we see, as it's falling, we see a little model of Vogel holding onto the turret.
It's almost like whiplash. It's like...
Yep. That tank's hitting hard.
And he's still
the turret breaks off. He's still hanging on to it.
It's going back and forth, this slamming him against rocks.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's one of those special effects that you get when you're 5 or 6 years old watching it. Yeah. When you're 5 or 6 years old watching it, you don't notice that whole little sequence there with the little doll. But as you get older and you watch, you notice it's very noticeable. But it's it's fun. It's part of what makes the movie so great. It's just those practical effects that you can look at them. It's clearly fake. You clearly see what it is, but it just adds to the character of the movie.
That holds what actually happened. Would not be as cool watching the CGI Vogel getting smashed against the rock multiple times.
No. Like watching Doll Vogel still hang on to the turret as the tank is falling apart is like watching the crocodiles spin, like roll over while they're eating Molaram. It's just great. But anyway, so Henry Sr., Sala, and Brody are all standing at the edge of the cliff looking down, trying to see if Indy is down there.
It's all very mournful.
And they're all, Indy's dead.
I never got to say goodbye.
I never told him anything. And then Indy comes walking up and looks over their shoulders.
Behind them. He's looking over.
And then Brody sees him. Brody sees him, looks at Indy, looks down the cliff, looks back at Indy.
he's like, Before Connery finally sees him. It's very emotional. I thought I'd lost your boy.
I thought I'd lost you.
Give him a hug, and Saul's happy, and
then, as they're starting to walk away from the cliff, Indy's hat blows by.
It rolls back. Yeah.
And he picks it up and puts it on. And there's great behind-the-scenes stuff during that whole tank sequence when he's on the horse and everything.
Mm-hmm.
His hat kept blowing off while we were filming. So at one point, he picked up a staple gun. It was an empty staple gun, and he starts putting it, like he's stapling it to his forehead. That was great. That's in one of the behind-the-scenes featurettes.
No, thank you.
But yeah, so they go to the Canyon of the Crescent Moon, where the ancient temple where the Grail is supposedly held is.
Looks like Petra.
Which is Petra. Yeah. It's Petra.
That's another weird thing. Like, you're 5 years old, you see that. You just like, okay.
Yeah.
You don't realize it's like kind of a famous place.
An actual, like,
and then
famous
you learn about
city.
Petra. Like, oh. That was in Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm.
But, they go in. They quickly have problems. They get captured. And there's this problem that all the dudes are getting cut in half. Or decapitated.
Their heads are getting cut off. And they get in there as they're sending another guy in. And he gets the first booby trap, the breath of God. And then his head comes rolling back. But strangely, there's no blood. You'd think that if he got decapitated, there would be blood.
Yeah, it's not a flaming hot thing where it just automatically cauterizes the wound. No.
So Donovan decides that Indy is going to be the one to go. And Indy won't do it. So Donovan shoots Henry Sr. in the chest. And he tells him that only the Grail can save your father now.
Time to ask yourself what you believe in.
So Indy goes. And the whole way he's got the diary and he's...
Only the penitent man will pass.
And meanwhile, it keeps cutting back to Henry Sr., who's saying the same thing. Only the penitent man will pass. Penitent man, penitent.
Penitent man. It's symbol.
Penitent man. And then Indy's like, penitent man kneels before God. And then he sees the blade coming, and he's like, kneel! And so he kneels down and then rolls, because there's another blade coming up from the floor.
How was he supposed to know about that one?
I will tell you how he knew about that one. Because he's smart. Because it's only supposed to be Christians who are able to get through there, right? Christians kneel before God.
Right.
Muslims kneel and then lay forward. So if they're just walking through, then that first blade will cut off their heads like it's been doing.
Right.
But if it's a Muslim coming through, they're going to kneel down and then they're going to lean forward. And so that's where that second blade comes up. So the second blade comes up to cut the head off the Muslims that might be going in there. So, yeah. That's why there are two blades.
Somersault over the other blade.
Yes.
And then, he lassos it, and
then there was a rope there, and he hooks the rope there so that the blades stop. But because it was booby traps built during the Crusades.
Yes. Good point.
When it was Christians against Muslims. So so they were building the traps for anybody who was not not a Christian.
But they get through.
And then he gets to the Word of God.
It looks like the Word of God. It's
just a bunch of letters all over the floor.
Bunch of letters all over. How to support it, we don't know. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. And so he's got to spell out the name of God. Jehovah. But in the Latin alphabet, Jehovah begins with an I. He steps on J, breaks through.
Idiot.
Breaks through the floor. But grabs on, is able to climb out. Idiot. In Latin, Jehovah starts with an I. So he goes I-E-H-O because he half his heel hit one of the other things and started breaking up.
Some of them are kind of small. Not sure how when he fell through and his arms capture himself.
Yeah.
On the J.
Yeah, because he fell through and then he grabbed one of the other letters that were around him. So those would have broken too. But yeah, there's just a lot of stuff in this movie. You kind of have to just take it.
Yeah. It's just fun.
But it's a fun movie. It's so much fun. I love it. But
H. Yeah, final H.
Yeah. So then he goes to the path of God, which is just a chasm. He's standing in a doorway.
For the lion.
There's a big lion sculpture next to him. Only with a leap from the lion's head will a man know his worth. And so he realizes it's a leap of faith. But instead of leaping, he just puts one foot straight out and falls forward.
There's a hidden bridge.
Mm-hmm. There's a hidden bridge, which was done really well. So this is another thing. So they actually got an artist. That bridge is there the whole time. They just got an artist who was really good and painted it to look exactly like the rock face ahead of him.
Yeah, no, it's all done.
So it looked invisible. So he gets across there, then he crawls through a little tunnel into this big room where he's all of a sudden attacked by an old knight. He vanquishes the knight by just dodging his swings until he gave up.
Basically ceded to him.
Mm-hmm.
He's done.
Because he's an old man. He's doing this for a long, long time.
Years. Yeah. He's got a replacement.
Yeah. But there's a table full of grails.
He's oddly dressed for a knight.
Yes, he's oddly dressed for a knight. Table full of grails.
No way to know which one does.
Yeah. And so shortly after Indy's there talking to the knight, then Donovan and Elsa come in. And so the knight tells them that only the true grail will bring life. The false grail would take it from you. And so
he tells them they need to choose wisely.
Yeah. So Donovan can't choose. There's too many grails for him to choose. So Elsa tells him to let her choose for him. So she does.
Bad move.
And this is when so Elsa at this point, if you look closely, she is intentionally giving him the wrong grail.
Yes.
Because she goes up, and the one that she picks, you see her look over at Indy and sort of nod her head a little bit, and then it goes back to Indy, and he's just looking at her and signaling that it's the wrong grail. And so she gets it, gives it to Donovan. He dips it in the water, drinks from it, and gets real old real fast.
Very fast.
Until he becomes a skeleton, and then somehow flies up against the wall and shatters.
It all shatters. Except for his Nazi pen.
Yeah, except for his Nazi pen.
They would say about Elsa. At least, she wasn't as terrible as a person, I guess. So
She was still working with the Nazis though. So yeah, she's still not a good person. But yeah, so then Indy figures that the Grail would be, the cup of a carpenter would be a simple cup, not some extravagant jewel encrusted gold chalice.
Mm-hmm.
So he finds the plainest looking one, and it turns out to be the
water.
Holy Grail, because the night after Donovan exploded, he chose poorly.
With the Grail line.
And then after Indy took a drink from the actual Grail, he said, chosen wisely.
But he gives a warning, they can't take.
Yes, but the Grail cannot pass
this seal.
Yes. But the Grail cannot pass beyond the Great Seal. That is the boundary and the price of immortality. So they get the Grail back to Henry Sr. Indy pours some on his wound, and it heals. Well, he gives him a drink from it first, and then he pours some on his wound. The wound heals like hydrogen peroxide. It just fizzes up.
He winces in pain.
So Indy and Henry Sr. at this point are immortal because they both drank from the Grail.
Yeah.
But, and that scares the rest of the Nazis away.
Yeah.
So they all go running off. And then Elsa picks up the Grail, starts backing up toward the seal. Indy yells at her, "Don't cross the seal! The knight warned us!" And she takes the Grail across the seal, and the place starts collapsing. And Indy and Henry Sr. are no longer immortal. So all these complaints that people have about the next movies, where, why are they afraid for their lives? Indy should be immortal. He drank from the Grail. Why is Henry, spoiler alert for the next movie, why is Henry Jones Sr. dead in the next movie? He should be immortal. It's because when Elsa took the Grail across the seal, the immortality went away.
Yep.
Because keeping the Grail in the temple,
she could not keep track,
is what keeps it. Yeah, taking it across the seal is the price of immortality, or keeping it within the seal.
Mm-hmm.
If you take it across, you lose it.
Yeah, you die right away. This means you lose.
No, it's just you lose immortality. So you'll die a natural. You'll die whenever you're going to die. But yeah, it just means you're not immortal anymore. So they were immortal for like 5 minutes.
Just enough to heal Mr. Jones.
Yes. So the ground starts cracking apart. The Grail is sitting on the edge. And it would have been fine if Elsa hadn't dove for it. She dives for the Grail and hits it and knocks it into the crack. And then it's sitting on a little ledge, and Indy jumps down and grabs her hand, and she's dangling over a bottomless pit. And she's reaching for the Grail. She won't give it. And she's wearing gloves, and they start slipping. Her hand starts slipping out of them, but she won't give up trying to get the Grail, and she falls to her death.
And she falls a very long way.
That duty badge falls in the crack. And then Indy falls. Then Indy falls down there.
And he's trying to get the Grail.
But
his dad has him.
His dad grabs his hand before he falls into the crack completely. And so he's reaching for the Grail. He can actually touch it. His arms are longer than Elsa's.
Mm-hmm.
But finally, the first time,
his finger there.
Henry calls him Indiana. He doesn't call him Junior. He first starts calling him Junior. Then he stops. And he's like, Indiana, let it go. And so Indy lets it go. He gives him the other hand. And his dad pulls him out. And they run out of the temple as it's all collapsing behind them. And it's Indy, Henry, Sala, and Brody on horses.
The knight there.
Oh yes, and the knight, as they're escaping, reaches up his hand and waves, or sort of like waves, salutes, whatever he's doing.
He's like, what?
Which,
like, fuck that.
I mean, yeah, he should have just raised his hand and then flipped it into a middle finger. Like, fuck you guys. You just destroyed my temple.
I told you, don't cross the seal. But then, before they were outside, and Hawkins,
you just got rid of my immortality too.
I'm gonna die in this cavern. He gets to see his brothers again, I guess.
Like, I'm almost 1,000 years old. I'm gonna die in like 5 seconds now.
Anyway, so they escape.
They escape through their adventure. Indy was able to find a connection with his dad that he never had before.
Yeah.
And Indy asks Henry what he found. And Henry says, illumination. Going back to the beginning of the movie, when it was young Indy, and he was sitting there, and may the men who illuminated this illuminate me. He found his illumination. And then that's when we find out that Indiana Jones is where Indy's name comes from. Because Sala asks what this junior means. What is this junior? Henry Jones Jr.
Junior.
And Indy's like, I like Indiana.
Name the dog.
We named the dog Indiana.
The dog?
You were named after the dog? I have very fond memories of that dog.
And then Brody was like, I know the way home.
I know the way. Follow me. He just rides off. And then they go chasing him. They get up to him, like with him riding off in the sunset. They get to see Indy sort of reach out and like stabilize Brody's horse.
It's the perfect backdrop to it.
Yeah, it is. There's the four of them are just riding off into the sunset. It's great.
This is all of it.
Such a great movie.
It's a great movie.
Such a great movie. I love it. I love it.
I need to watch it again soon.
I love all the Indiana Jones movies. Even Crystal Skull, I love it. I mean, I don't love it nearly as much as these three that we just talked about, but it's still it has its moments. It's still we'll get into it. We'll get into it the next
I
episode.
definitely can't wait to discuss it because I have thoughts.
I love it because it's Indiana Jones.
It's still,
but
good movie within its.
But yeah, Last Crusade definitely my favorite of the movies of the Indiana Jones movies.
Yeah, it's close for me.
It's the most fun.
Yeah,
it's the most fun of them. It's. I mean, you can't go wrong with the Harrison Ford Sean Connery combo.
No, they play so well together.
They do.
Just growing son.
And we didn't discuss this, but this is the first of the movies where we see Indy wearing a tie in the field.
That's right.
You know why that is?
Why?
I think it's a psychological thing on his part because he's trying to find his dad and he wants to look nice for him. So he's wearing a tie.
I like it.
He's trying to impress his dad. That's what I think anyway.
Yeah, I buy it.
It's a whether he did it intentionally or not. I think it was a psychological thing where he's trying to, because he and his dad never saw eye to eye. So he's trying to
these things
to impress him.
Things kind of change within their meaning. Different influences. But I like the idea.
So
it's a good one.
But yeah, so that's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Last Crusade.
Any closing thoughts on?
No, I mean, I know we're going to continue on, but for such a long time, it was just like that was the trilogy, and I thought, maybe there's a sequel down the road, fourth one, and
from 1989 until 2008, there were no Indiana Jones movies,
and it was fine to make
no new
Crystal
ones
Skull.
anyway.
And if they didn't make Crystal Skull, things would just fine the way they were too.
Yeah,
but it's I think particularly the music stayed with me, and it's always times just fun. Especially with Crusade, and this might be the reason why too. Is I think some of the one-liners are much easier to stay with you.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think I have to agree with you that the other ones that I named are better movies, but this might be my favorite.
Yep.
There's a lot of reasons that we discussed, but yeah, I enjoyed talking about them.
So, once again, that's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Come back next time when we'll be talking about Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yes.
So we get to talk about some
Raiders,
interdimensional beings and whatnot. Yeah. So however you feel about that movie, come back and listen to how we feel about it. And we'd love to hear what you feel in the comments. So we will see you then.